In a Newport private club, I watched a man lose his social standing without mentioning money once. He just sold his company for $40 million, but at that table his wealth meant nothing. High society doesn't scan your bank account. It scans for 18 quiet codes that reveal who truly belong. Let me introduce you to David Martinez, $40 million in the bank, first time invitation to an elite dinner. He thought the hard part was over, making the money. He had no idea the real test was just beginning. At that first dinner, David gestured wildly while telling stories, laughed loudly at his own jokes. When someone asked how he knew the hosts, he launched straight into his pitch. I'm building an AI platform for enterprise resource optimization. The woman asking smiled politely and excused herself 90 seconds later. And wait, meanwhile, the man across from him, wearing a faded polo shirt, so quiet you'd almost forget he was there, barely spoke above a whisper. Turns out he managed $8 billion. 3 months later, David received another invitation, this time to a private sailing weekend in Newport. What changed? Not his bank account. His fluency in a language most people never learn. Before we break down the 18 specific rules, you need to understand the 5 principles underneath, because without these, you'll spend your life memorizing behaviors without ever understanding why they matter. Principle 1. Restraint signals security. If you have nothing to prove, you have no reason to shout. The wealthy whisper because survival isn't extraordinary, it's Tuesday. Principle 2. Mystery creates value. In an age of oversharing, the unspoken is your greatest asset. When you reveal everything immediately, you remove all reason for curiosity. Principle 3. Others before self. Refinement isn't about elevating yourself, it's about elevating the room. The most magnetic person isn't the most impressive, it's the one who makes others feel impressive. Principle 4. Silence is language. It's not an absence of sound, it's a tool for depth. The pause creates weight, it signals thought, it invites intimacy. Principle 5. The environment is shared. You are a steward of the collective experience. If someone spills wine, if conversation lags, your role is to smooth it, not highlight it. Master these 5 principles, and the 18 rules become instinct. Miss them, and you'll forever feel like an outsider looking in. Now the codes themselves. Phase 1. Rule 1. The principle of low-frequency effort. Remember that quiet man in Newport? His stillness wasn't accidental. It was elegant restraint, and it flows directly from Principle 1. Restraint signals security. Visible effort reveals insecurity. When you gesticulate wildly, raise your voice to hold attention, lean forward to dominate space, you're signaling that you don't own your position in the room yet. True power whispers because it's comfortable with the silence that followed. David's body at that first dinner was screaming, "Notice me, validate me, I earned my spot here." Everyone noticed. No one said anything, but he was marked. The fix: your body should convey ease, not effort. Speak at a volume that requires others to lean in slightly. Keep your hands still or moving slowly. Treat attention as something you steward, not something you see. Rule 2. The erasure of professional identity. I once spent 20 minutes at a garden party talking to a woman about Japanese beetles destroying her heirloom tomatoes. She had soil under her fingernails, wore a sun-faded shirt. We discussed companion planting and soil pH. At lunch, I learned she was a retired federal judge whose opinions had shaped Supreme Court decisions. Her courtroom wasn't her identity, it was just where she'd spent her time. Here's what David didn't understand. In the meritocratic world, your job is your identity. You are what you produce. But in legacy wealth circles, life is about being, not doing. When you lead with your professional function, I'm building an AI platform, you reveal that you see yourself as your productivity. Instead, ask connection-based questions. How do you know the hosts? Have you spent much time in this area? What brought you to this event? These questions look for bridges, not economic function. Rule 3. The art of understated specificity. The elite avoid superlative. When you describe something as amazing or incredible, you accidentally admit you find it extraordinary, which implies it's better than what you're used to. Listen to the difference. Amateur. This art is mind-blowing. I've never seen anything like it. Master. The use of light here is quite effective. Amateur. This house is insane. Master. The proportions in this room work beautifully. Remove intensity. Replace emotion with observation. Speak as though excellence is your baseline, not a shocking surprise. This flows from Principle 1 again. Restraint signals security. When you're used to quality, you don't need to announce it. Maestre. This doesn't mean being cold. You can express appreciation. Just do it through specific observation rather than general enthusiasm. Rule 4. The strategic use of the mutual third. When 2 people of high standing meet, they don't talk about themselves. They talk about a mutual third, a shared acquaintance, a location, an institution you both know. Think of conversation as 3 concentric circles: the outer circle, the environment, the weather, the garden, the architect. The middle circle: mutual acquaintances and shared history. The inner circle: ideas and philosophy, personal stories. Outsiders rush to the inner circle. They want to share their story, their insight. The refined know that the journey through the outer circles builds the trust necessary for true depth. At David's second event, when seated next to a historian, he didn't pick. He started with the outer circle. The light in this room changes completely as the sun sets. Then moved to middle. I understand you know the hosts through the museum board. Only after 15 minutes did they reach philosophy and ideas. The historian later told the host, "That young man has an interesting mind. We should have him back." What changed wasn't David's intelligence, it was his sequencing. everything. Phase 2, emotional mastery, 6 o'clock to 9:30. The next 4 rules move from behavior to psychology. You can fake the external rules temporarily, but you cannot fake these. These must be genuinely inhabited. Rule 5, emotional smoothness. At a dinner in Charleston, I watched a server spill an entire glass of Bordeaux on an heirloom tablecloth. The host, a woman whose family had owned that table for 5 generations, paused for just a beat, then said, "Well, this cloth has survived worse," and continued her story without breaking rhythm. This is principle 5 in action. The environment is shared. Refined individuals protect the smoothness of the collective experience at all costs. Hey, when you complain about traffic, minor inconveniences, weather, service delays, you signal that you're easily rattled. To those who manage large legacies and complex families, being easily rattled is disqualifying. Treat disruptions as texture, not tragedy. Your equanimity under small pressures signals how you'll behave under larger ones. Rule 6, the ease of receiving. Watch what happens when someone gives a compliment. "Oh, amateur, I love that dress." Response, "Oh, this? It's so old, I almost didn't wear it. It makes me look pale." Master, "I love that dress." Response, "Thank you, that's very kind of you." Feel the difference. When you protest a compliment, you turn the other person's generosity into labor. You force them to reassure you. You make their kindness about your insecurity. At David's first event, someone complimented his watch. He immediately deflected. "Oh, it's nothing. Just something I picked up. Probably not even real." The compliment giver felt awkward and never spoke to David again. At event 2, same compliment. New response, "Thank you. It was a gift from my father." The conversation opened naturally. True humility isn't denying your worth. It's simply not being obsessed with it. Rule 7, protecting others from embarrassment. Here's one of the most defining traits of true refinement, the habit of absorbing other people's mistakes. If a guest uses the wrong fork, a master host will quietly use the same wrong fork to ensure the guest doesn't feel isolated. If someone mispronounces a name, you mispronounce it the same way so they're not corrected in front of the group. This connects to principle 3, others before self. When you fail to protect others, you reveal you're more interested in hierarchy than harmony. I once watched a billionaire deliberately tell a self-deprecating story about confusing 2 similar wine regions. Not because he was confused, but because a guest had made that exact error 5 minutes earlier. He absorbed the mistake so the guest could relax. That guest became a crucial business partner 3 years later. The person who provides cover becomes invaluable. The person who watches others fail becomes avoided. Rule 8, the grace of the unspoken. There is profound respect in elite circles for what is not said. If a friend's family is in the middle of a public scandal, a bankruptcy, a divorce, an arrest, the elite don't ignore the person, but they also don't force them to discuss it. They offer support through normalcy. "Carolyn, it's lovely to see you. We should have tea soon." What they're actually saying, "I know, I'm here. Your dignity is intact in my presence." Forcing someone to discuss their pain is a violation of a sacred boundary. Silence in this context is the highest form of respect. Don't confuse this with avoidance. You acknowledge the person warmly. You simply don't demand they perform their trauma for social currency. Phase 3, conversational mechanics, 9:30 to 13:30. These next 6 rules govern the actual mechanics of conversation, the rhythm, the pacing, the exits. This is where mastery becomes visible. Rule 9, the language of simplicity. There is a specific vocabulary that marks an insider. It's not about big words, it's about the correct words, which are almost always simpler. Insiders say house, not mansion. They say quality, not luxury. They say summering in Maine, not vacationing. They say we keep a place in Aspen, not we have a ski chalet. Simplicity is sophistication. Adding fancy labels is what the newly wealthy do because they're still impressed by their own possessions. Old money doesn't announce, it assumes you already know. Rule 10, comfortable silence as social currency. The outsider fears the lull. They feel pressure to keep the verbal engine running. The refined individual knows that silence creates anticipation. This is principle 4, silence is language. When you hold silence for 3 to 5 seconds before responding to a complex question, you show you're thinking, not just reacting. You are the master of the clock, not its slave. At his first event, David met every question with an immediate answer. He was performing competence through speed. At his second event, when asked about AI ethics, David paused, looked out the window, took a breath, then responded thoughtfully. The person asking later told the host, he actually thinks before he speaks. Rare quality. Silence is where intimacy lives. If you can't access it, you can't access depth. Rule 11, the rhythm of the echo. Elite small talk follows a pattern of mirroring sentiment before expanding. Listen to the difference. The hijack. The lake is so still today. Response. That reminds me of my trip to Lake Tahoe where we rented this boat. The echo. The lake is so still today. Response. It really is, isn't it? There's something almost meditative about it. Pause there. Do you get out on the water often? When you echo, you tell the other person, your reality is shared. I am present with you. When you hijack, you say, your observation is merely a launching pad for my story. Rule 12, the soft transition. The way you leave a conversation is as important as how you enter it. Okay, the hard exit, social death. Looking over someone's shoulder for someone more important. Checking your phone, saying, I should probably go mingle while already walking away. The soft transition, mastery. This has been such a pleasant conversation. I should circulate a bit, but I hope we'll talk again before the evening ends. You create a bridge. You honor the time spent together. You leave the door open. The hard exit makes an enemy. The soft transition suspicion makes an ally. Rule 13. The subtlety of humor. Elite humor is rarely joke bait. There are no setups and punchline. It's situational, dry, and often self-deprecating. Oh wait, performative humor. Telling a loud joke for the whole room marks you as someone who needs validation. Refined humor is a gift shared quietly between two people. Honestly, when David finally made someone laugh at his second event, it wasn't with a prepared joke. It was a quiet observation about the absurdity of having 7 forks at a single play setting. The person next to him smiled. No one else heard. It was perfect. Audiences are for theatres. Social gatherings are for connection. Rule 14. The sovereignty of attention. In an age of digital distraction, giving someone your undivided attention is a radical act. When you put your phone away and look someone in the eye, you're making a declaration. For these 10 minutes, you are the most important person in this room. Oh, that is intoxicating. That is rare. That is what people remember. You cannot build social capital while simultaneously looking for an upgrade across the room. Phase 4. True mastery. 1330 to 1630. Here's where everything inverts. The final 4 rules separate those who've learned the game from those who've transcended it. Rule 15. The slow reveal. The outsider leads with accomplishments. The insider practices the slow reveal, letting you discover their depth over time. This is principle 2 in its purest form. Mystery creates value. When you overshare, you're asking for a grade. When you hold back, you invite curiosity. David's transformation. At event 1, his startup was in the first sentence. At event 2, someone asked 3 weeks later, "Wait, what do you actually do for work?" By then, they were already friends. But be careful, don't confuse mystery with evasion. Mystery invites. Evasion creates suspicion. A world-class yachtsman describes himself as someone who enjoys being on the water. A billionaire says they work in finance. A Pulitzer winner mentions they do some writing. This isn't false modesty. It's an invitation for others to discover your depth, and humans are hardwired to love the thrills of discovery. Rule 16. Discretion as currency. In the French courts, discretion wasn't just manners, it was survival. Today, it remains the ultimate trust signal. Gossip is the fast food of social interaction. It's quick, it's satisfying, and it's deeply unhealthy for your reputation. If you betray someone else's privacy for social currency, you've proven you cannot hold information. You will be invited to large, impersonal cocktail parties, but you will never be invited to the small, intimate dinners where real power is brokered. The test: can you hear something scandalous and simply hold it? Can you be trusted with silence? That's the difference between being included and being truly trusted. Rule 17. The paradox of authenticity. Now here's what nobody tells you about these rules. They can feel suffocating. You might master every code and realize you've become someone you don't recognize. You're so busy managing your restraint, your silences, your echoes, that you've lost yourself entirely. So let me be honest with you. These rules value smoothness over raw honesty, composure over spontaneity. Sometimes that serves your goals. Sometimes it's a cake. The question isn't just can you belong to these spaces, it's should you? I've watched people spend years learning this language, only to realize the conversations happening in those quiet rooms weren't actually that interesting. The price of admission was higher than the value of what was inside. So before you practice these rules, ask yourself, are you learning this language to access opportunity, or are you trying to become someone else entirely? I tell you, because the most powerful version of these rules isn't about changing who you are, it's about being the most refined version of yourself. Rule 18. When to break every rule. Here is the ultimate secret. The people with the most secure positions in high society break these rules constantly, but they do it strategically. A woman who's been a pillar of her community for 40 years can be loud and emotional when discussing a tragedy that deserves outrage. A normally reserved man can be gregarious and high energy to help a nervous newcomer feel welcome. The principle, the rules, the training wheel. Once you've mastered them so deeply that restraint is your default, you can deploy intensity as a gift. David Martinez was intense at his first event because he wanted it to take energy from the room. Well, a master is intense because they want to give it. The difference is intention. Let me show you what changed for David. At his second event, David arrives 15 minutes late, which is actually perfect in these circles. Early signals you have nothing better to do. He wears a suit that whispers, not shouts. When asked how he knows the host, he doesn't mention his startup. He mentions their shared interest in abstract expressionism, something he'd learned the host collected. He listens to a historian talk about medieval manuscripts for 20 minutes. He doesn't pitch. He doesn't dominate. He asks one question: the detective work of history, is that what keeps you engaged? And when complimented on his insight, he simply says, thank you. When there's a lull in conversation, he doesn't fill it. When he leaves, he uses the soft transition. This has been a wonderful conversation. I hope we'll continue it soon. 3 weeks later, David receives that handwritten note inviting him to Newport. He'd passed the test he didn't know he was taking. I'll leave you with what Margaret, that woman in Charleston who handled the wine spill, told me afterward. The rooms you're trying to get into, they're not locked. They've never been locked. They're just quiet. Most people are so busy performing that they can't hear the actual conversation happen. The real secret isn't that these rules are some elaborate gatekeeping mechanism, though they absolutely are that too. The real secret is that following these principles actually creates better conversation, less friction, more depth, more genuine connection. You're not learning to fake belonging, you're learning to create the kind of spaces where real intimacy becomes possible. Merci, Mr. Darf. Stop performing, start listening. The door will open on its own. Now here's your assignment. Choose 3 of these rules, and not all 18, just 3. Test them at your next social gather. Could be dinner with friends, could be a work event. However, film yourself if you can. Watch your hands, count your interruptions, time your silences. Then come back and tell me which rule felt most unnatural, which one actually changed the dynamic. The codes are yours now.